Ethan stared at the alien council, his heart pounding like a drum. The Zintar elders, towering creatures with glowing yellow eyes and shimmering silver skin, passed their judgment without emotion. "You are guilty of sabotage," the leader hissed. "Your punishment is exile to Kaelix Prime." Ethan's blood turned cold. Kaelix Prime, the deadliest planet known to exist. No human had ever returned from it. It wasn't a punishment, it was a death sentence. He tried to protest, but the guards dragged him away before he could say a word. Within hours, he was shoved into a cramped pod and launched toward the planet. As the pod entered the atmosphere, flames licked the windows. The last thing he saw before crashing into the jungle was the thick canopy of alien trees that seemed to stretch endlessly. The crash left Ethan shaken but alive. He crawled out of the wreckage, coughing from the smoke. Around him, the jungle buzzed with sounds, screeches, growls, and something that sounded like clicking. He grabbed a metal shard from the pod as a makeshift weapon. The air was heavy and humid, and the ground felt like it was alive, squirming with tiny, glowing insects. Ethan didn't know where to go, but he knew he couldn't stay by the wreckage for long. The Zintar would be watching, betting on how quickly he'd die. Hours turned into days. Ethan survived on instinct, eating strange fruits he hoped weren't poisonous and drinking water from a small stream. The jungle tested him at every step. Vines tried to trap him, and packs of small, vicious creatures with razor-sharp teeth chased him relentlessly. One night, while resting in the hollow of a massive tree, and heard a low, rumbling growl. He froze, gripping his metal shard tightly. The ground trembled slightly. Something big was approaching. Through the thick bushes emerged a creature unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. It was enormous, standing at least 10 feet tall on all fours. Its black fur shimmered like liquid metal, and its eyes glowed a deep, haunting red. Its claws were long and curved, capable of tearing through anything. Ethan knew immediately this was Nightclaw, the deadliest predator on Kaelix Prime. Nightclaw snarled, and Ethan's grip tightened on his weapon. He knew he didn't stand a chance, but running wasn't an option. "If this is how I go, so be it," Ethan muttered under his breath. The beast lunged, but Ethan rolled to the side just in time. Nightclaw's claws slashed through the tree behind him, splitting it in half. Ethan scrambled to his feet, dodging another swipe. He spotted a sharp rock nearby and hurled it at the creature's face. It hit Nightclaw's eye, making the beast roar in pain. Instead of attacking again, Nightclaw paused, its glowing red eyes fixed on Ethan. There was something in its gaze, curiosity. Ethan, breathing hard, realized it wasn't attacking anymore. It was studying him. "Not so scary now, are you?" Ethan said, his voice shaky. But deep down, he knew this was no victory. The beast was choosing to spare him for now. Over the next few days, Ethan noticed that Nightclaw began following him, always at a distance. At first, he thought it was stalking him, waiting for the right moment to strike. But soon, he realized it wasn't hunting him. Nightclaw seemed curious. Ethan tried to keep his distance, but the beast kept showing up. When Ethan fought off a pack of smaller predators, Nightclaw stayed back, watching silently. When Ethan found a freshwater spring, the beast drank from it after him, keeping a respectful distance. One day, Ethan found himself face to face with Nightclaw again. This time, he didn't raise his weapon. Instead, he slowly reached into his bag and pulled out a piece of fruit. He tossed it toward the beast. Nightclaw sniffed it, then swallowed it whole. "That's a start," Ethan said, cautiously sitting down. Nightclaw sat too, its massive body dwarfing Ethan. The unspoken truce between them grew stronger each day. Soon, Nightclaw began hunting smaller creatures and leaving parts of its kills for Ethan. In return, Ethan shared what little he had. As weeks passed, Ethan and Nightclaw discovered a hidden cave. Inside, they found ancient machinery, evidence of a long-abandoned Zintar experiment. Ethan pieced together the truth. The Zintar had used Kaelix Prime as a testing ground, creating monsters like Nightclaw as weapons for their wars. "They created you," Ethan whispered, looking at the beast. Nightclaw growled softly, as if it understood. But their discovery wasn't without consequence. A Xintar drone spotted them, alerting the council. They sent a retrieval team to silence Ethan and destroy all evidence of their experiments. When the Xintar soldiers arrived, they weren't prepared for what awaited them. Nightclaw attacked with ferocity, tearing through their ranks, while Ethan used his newfound knowledge of the alien machines to disable their weapons. The battle was brutal, but together Ethan and Nightclaw emerged victorious. Ethan stood at the edge of the jungle, the wreckage of the Xintar ship burning behind him. For the first time in weeks, he smiled. "We're going back," he said, looking at Nightclaw. The beast tilted its massive head as if questioning him. "They need to see what you really are," Ethan continued. "Not a weapon, not a monster, but proof that humanity can survive anything." When Ethan returned to the alien council with Nightclaw at his side, the room fell silent. The once feared beast now walked calmly beside the human it had chosen as an equal. The Xintar elders stared, their glowing yellow eyes wide with shock. Ethan smirked. "Miss me?" The beast he had tamed had become his greatest ally and their worst nightmare. Anna clenched her fists as the alien guards dragged her through the cold steel corridors of the Zorathian mothership. The tall, insect-like aliens didn't flinch when she cursed at them. Her voice echoed in the empty hallway. She had fought back when they tried to arrest her, sabotaging one of their machines in the process. Now, she was being sent to the planet Kaelix, a place everyone called the Forbidden Planet. "No one survives Kaelix," one of the Zorathian guards hissed. Their translator device made their voice sound robotic. Anna glared at them. "Then I'll be the first," she snapped, her voice filled with defiance. The guards said nothing as they shoved her into a small transport pod. A few minutes later, the pod launched, hurtling her toward her supposed doom. As the mothership disappeared from view, Anna gritted her teeth. She wasn't about to die without a fight. The pod crashed into the dense jungle of Kaelix with a deafening roar. Anna groaned as she unbuckled herself and stumbled out. Her boots sank into the soft, glowing moss that covered the ground. Strange trees with twisting, black branches loomed above her, their leaves glowing faintly in the dim light. The air smelled metallic, and the constant hum of distant creatures sent shivers down her spine. Her first instinct was to search for water and shelter. Grabbing a piece of jagged metal from the wreckage as a makeshift weapon, she moved cautiously through the jungle. Every step felt like a risk. The ground beneath her feet shifted as if alive, and the plants around her seemed to watch her every move. As the hours passed, Anna realized Kaelix wasn't just dangerous, it was designed to kill. A vine nearly strangled her when she stopped to rest, and a swarm of flying creatures with razor-sharp wings forced her to dive into a shallow stream to escape. Her muscles ached, and her clothes were torn, but she kept moving. She wasn't going to give up. That night, as she huddled inside the hollow trunk of a tree, Anna heard the low growl of a predator nearby. Her heart raced as she peeked through a crack in the wood. In the darkness, a pair of glowing yellow eyes stared back at her. The next morning, Anna moved quickly, knowing she was being hunted. Whatever creature had watched her last night was still out there. She found a clearing with a small pond and decided to rest briefly. As she knelt to drink, the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. The predator was here. She spun around just in time to see it, a massive wolf-like beast with jet-black fur and long, sharp claws. Its fangs gleamed as it growled, circling her slowly. Anna raised her jagged piece of metal, though she knew it wouldn't be enough. The beast lunged, and Anna dove to the side. She scrambled to her feet, dodging another attack. She threw a large rock at the creature, hitting it square on the nose. The beast hesitated, shaking its head. "Not so tough, are you?" she muttered, trying to catch her breath. The creature growled but didn't attack again. Instead, it sniffed the air, as if it were deciding whether Anna was worth the trouble. Finally, it turned and walked away, vanishing into the jungle. Anna let out a shaky breath. She had survived, but for how long? Days turned into weeks. Anna grew more confident in navigating the hostile environment. She crafted crude tools and traps, hunted smaller creatures, and found a cave to use as a base. But the wolf-like beast, which she had started calling Shadow, kept appearing. At first, it seemed to be following her, watching her from a distance. One night, as Anna sat by a small fire outside her cave, Shadow approached again. This time, it wasn't growling. Instead, it dropped a dead creature at her feet and sat down, its glowing eyes fixed on her. Anna stared in disbelief. "You're helping me?" She cautiously took the creature and cooked it over the fire. Shadow stayed nearby, watching her eat. From that night on, the beast became her unlikely companion. It protected her from other predators, and even helped her find food. One day, Shadow led Anna to a strange metal structure hidden deep in the jungle. It was clearly alien, with sleek designs and glowing panels. Inside, Anna found something horrifying: rows of glass tubes, each containing a human body in stasis. Some were alive. Others weren't. "What is this place?" she whispered, her stomach turning. Shadow growled, pacing nervously. Anna quickly realized this wasn't just a random planet, it was a testing ground. The Zorathians had been sending humans here for years, experimenting on them to create stronger, more resilient survivors. Shadow wasn't just any beast, it had been one of their creations, designed to kill humans like her. Before Anna could leave, a Zorathian drone spotted her. She knew it would alert the mothership. "They're coming," she muttered, gripping her weapon. Shadow growled in agreement. When the Zorathian soldiers arrived, they weren't prepared for what they faced. Shadow tore through their ranks with terrifying speed and strength, while Anna used her traps and the alien technology to fight back. Together, they destroyed the alien facility and escaped into the jungle. As the Zorathian ship left Kaelix, Anna stood beside Shadow, staring at the wreckage of the facility. She had survived the Forbidden Planet, uncovered its secrets, and gained an unexpected ally. "We're going back," she said, patting Shadow's massive head. "They need to pay for what they've done." Shadow growled softly, as if in agreement. Together, they began the long journey back, ready to expose the truth and fight for humanity's freedom. Cade stood at the edge of the platform, his wrists bound with glowing alien cuffs. The cold wind from the Zarnak desert stung his face, but he refused to show fear. Around him, the alien council glared down from their seats, their shimmering blue eyes filled with disdain. "You have defied our laws," said High Chancellor Orvek, his voice echoing across the chamber. "For your crimes, you are banished to Kaelix Prime." Cade's stomach churned. Kaelix Prime was no ordinary planet. It was a death trap, a place where the Zarnak exiled criminals and enemies. No one had ever survived it. Cade smirked, masking his fear. "If you think Kaelix will kill me, you're wrong. I'll survive, and I'll come back." The council members laughed, their cold, metallic voices mocking him. Orvek leaned forward, his face expressionless. "You won't return, human. You will join the others who died screaming." The guards shoved Cade into a transport pod, locking him inside. As the engines roared to life, he stared at the endless stars outside the window. "We'll see about that," he muttered. The pod crash-landed on Kaelix Prime, slamming into the thick jungle. Cade groaned as he unbuckled himself, his head spinning. Smoke rose from the wreckage, and the air was thick with the smell of burnt metal and ozone. He stumbled out, coughing. Around him, the jungle was alive with strange growls, clicking noises, and the distant roar of something enormous. The plants glowed faintly in the dim light, their shapes alien and menacing. Cade grabbed a metal shard from the wreckage as a weapon. He knew the Zarnak would be watching, betting on how quickly he'd die. "Not today," he whispered, gripping the shard tightly. The first night was brutal. Cade had barely made it a mile from the crash site when he was attacked by a pack of creatures. They were small but vicious, with razor-sharp teeth and glowing red eyes. He fought them off with the metal shard, his arms aching as he swung wildly. By the time he found shelter in the hollow of a massive tree, he was bleeding and exhausted. He wrapped his wounds with strips of his shirt, his hands shaking. "This planet is alive," he muttered, staring into the darkness. "And it wants me dead." The next few days were a blur of survival. Cade scavenged for food, eating strange fruits and hunting small creatures with makeshift traps. The jungle tested him at every turn. Poisonous vines tried to strangle him, and the ground itself seemed to shift under his feet. But Cade refused to give up. He wasn't just fighting to survive, he was fighting to prove the Zarnak wrong. On the fourth night, everything changed. Cade was resting near a stream when he heard the low, rumbling growl of a predator. He froze, his heart pounding. Slowly, he turned his head. Out of the shadows emerged a creature unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was massive, standing on four legs, with sleek black fur that shimmered in the faint light. Its eyes glowed a deep yellow, and its claws were long and curved, like blades. The beast snarled, baring its fangs. Cade gripped his weapon, knowing it wouldn't be enough. "All right," he muttered. "Let's see what you've got." The beast lunged, and Cade rolled to the side just in time. Its claws slashed through the ground where he'd been standing. Cade scrambled to his feet, dodging another attack. He spotted a sharp rock nearby and threw it at the creature, hitting it on the side of the head. The beast roared in anger, but instead of attacking again, it stopped. Stared at Cade, its glowing eyes narrowing. There was something strange in its gaze, almost like curiosity. Cade, breathing hard, lowered his weapon slightly. "What are you waiting for?" he asked, his voice trembling. The beast growled softly but didn't move. After a moment, it turned and disappeared into the jungle. Over the next few days, Cade noticed the beast he began calling it, Shadow, following him from a distance. At first, he thought it was stalking him, waiting for the right moment to strike. But soon, he realized Shadow wasn't hunting him. It was watching him. One night, as Cade was tending to a fire, Shadow approached again. This time, it wasn't snarling. It sat a few feet away, its glowing eyes fixed on Cade. Cade hesitated, then tossed a piece of roasted meat toward the beast. Shadow sniffed it, then ate it in one bite. "You're not so bad," Cade said, smiling slightly. From that night on, Shadow became his unlikely ally. The beast helped him hunt and protected him from other predators. In return, Cade shared his food and spoke to it like a companion. One day, Shadow led Cade to a hidden cave deep in the jungle. Inside, Cade found something shocking: an ancient Zarnak control center, its screen still glowing faintly. As he explored, he discovered files about Kaelix Prime. The Zarnak had been using the planet as a testing ground, sending prisoners to study how they survived. Cade's exile hadn't been a punishment, it had been an experiment. "They're watching us," Cade muttered, anger boiling in his chest. Shadow growled, as if sensing his rage. Cade made a decision. "We're not staying here," he said, turning to the beast. "We're going to find a way off this rock. And when we do, the Zarnak are going to pay." As Cade and Shadow began their journey to uncover the truth and escape Kaelix, one thing became clear: the Zarnak had underestimated him. He wasn't just the last exile. He was their worst mistake. The wind howled through the dense jungle of Kaelix, carrying with it the faint metallic scent of danger. Dax crouched low, gripping the crude spear he had fashioned from broken ship parts. His eyes darted through the shadows, every movement making his heart race. Something was out there, watching him. Kaelix was not a place for the faint of heart. It was a prison planet, a wasteland where the galaxy's worst criminals were dumped and left to fend for themselves. But Dax wasn't a criminal. He was a pilot, framed for smuggling and abandoned here by the corrupt council of Zarnak. Now he was on his own, surviving on nothing but wits and instinct. And something was hunting him. The first sign of the beast had come 3 nights ago. Dax had been gathering water from a glowing blue stream when he saw the footprints, massive, clawed, and too fresh for comfort. They had circled his camp, stopping just shy of the fire he had lit to keep predators away. "Great!" he had muttered to himself, scanning the jungle nervously. As if this planet wasn't bad enough. Since then, the beast had been a constant presence. It never showed itself, but Dax could feel it. The weight of its gaze pressed down on him, its low growls echoing through the trees at night. But tonight, something was different. The jungle was too quiet. Even the strange chirping insects that filled the air with their noise had gone silent. Dax tightened his grip on his spear. He wasn't going to die here, not without a fight. The attack came suddenly. A blur of black fur and glowing yellow eyes lunged from the shadows, knocking Dax to the ground. His spear flew from his hands as he rolled, narrowly avoiding the beast's massive claws. It was enormous, like a wolf but more monstrous. Its sleek, dark fur shimmered faintly in the dim light of Kaelix's twin moons. Its teeth gleamed as it snarled, circling him. Dax scrambled to his feet, his chest heaving. "All right, big guy," he said, trying to steady his voice. "Let's see what you've got." The beast lunged again, and Dax dove to the side. He grabbed a sharp rock and slashed at its flank, drawing a thin line of glowing blue blood. The beast roared in pain, but it didn't retreat. Instead, it paused, studying him. Its glowing eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Dax thought he saw something strange in its gaze intelligence. The beast didn't attack again. Instead, it stepped back and let out a low growl, almost like a warning. Then it disappeared into the jungle, leaving Dax alone and shaken. He retrieved his spear and slumped against a tree, his mind racing. Why hadn't it killed him? It could have torn him apart easily, yet it had stopped. "Maybe it's toying with me," he muttered, staring into the darkness. But deep down, he knew there was more to it. The beast wasn't just a mindless predator. It was something else. Over the next few days, Dax began to notice patterns. The beast would appear at night, always keeping its distance. It seemed to be watching him, testing him. When other predators came close, it would chase them off. At first, Dax thought it was coincidence. But as time went on, he began to realize the truth: the beast wasn't hunting him. It was protecting him. One night, as Dax sat by his fire, the beast emerged from the shadows. It approached slowly, its massive frame illuminated by the flickering flames. Dax tensed, gripping his spear, but the beast didn't attack. Instead, it sat down a few feet away, its glowing eyes fixed on him. Dax hesitated, then lowered his spear. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The beast tilted its head, almost as if it were trying to understand him. Then it let out a low, rumbling growl and stood up, motioning with its head toward the jungle. "You want me to follow you?" Dax asked, frowning. The beast growled again, more insistently this time. Against his better judgment, Dax grabbed his spear and followed. The beast led him deep into the jungle, through winding paths and across glowing streams. Eventually, they arrived at a massive cave hidden behind a waterfall. Inside, Dax found something he hadn't expected: technology. The walls of the cave were lined with glowing panels and alien machinery. In the center of the room stood a large, cylindrical pod. "What is this place?" Dax whispered, stepping closer. The beast growled softly, its gaze fixed on the pod. Dax examined the controls, his mind racing. The symbols on the panels were Zarnakian. This wasn't just a random cave, it was a research facility. The Zarnak had been using Kaelix to conduct experiments. And the beast. It wasn't natural. It was their creation. "They made you," Dax said, turning to the creature. "But you escaped, didn't you?" The beast growled, and for the first time, Dax saw something he hadn't expected. Pain.as Dax explored the facility. He found records of the experiments. The Zarnak had been creating genetically enhanced creatures to serve as weapons. The beast, labeled Subject 47, was the most powerful of them all. But it had rebelled, destroying the facility and killing its creators. Now it was the last of its kind. Dax turned to the beast, a new respect in his eyes. "You're not just a monster," he said. "You're a survivor." The beast growled softly, almost like a purr. From that day on, Dax and the beast became an unlikely team. Together, they fought to survive Kaelix, hunting for food and fending off other predators. But Dax knew their time on the planet was limited. The Zarnak would come back, and when they did, he and the beast would be ready. Ase stood at the entrance of the cave, staring at the distant stars. Dax placed a hand on the beast's massive head. "They think we're dead," he said with a smirk. "Let's prove them wrong." The beast let out a low growl, and together they vanished into the jungle, ready to face whatever came next. The Zarnak council chamber was silent as the High Chancellor stepped forward. His voice echoed through the grand hall. The human has failed, as expected. No one survives Kaelix Prime. The other council members nodded in agreement. Kaelix Prime was a death sentence, a place where the galaxy's worst were sent to perish. No one ever returned from the hostile, uncharted planet. But deep within the shadows of the galaxy, something was stirring. The human they had cast away was not dead. He was coming back. And he wasn't alone. When Darren's pod had crash-landed on Kaelix Prime, he'd thought he was already dead. The impact had left him bruised and disoriented, and the planet itself was an unrelenting nightmare. The skies were blood red, and the ground was covered in jagged rocks and strange glowing fungi. The air hummed with the distant roars of alien predators. Darren had no weapons, no supplies, and no allies. All he had was his determination to survive. The first few days were a blur of hunger and fear. Every shadow seemed to hide a predator, and the nights brought creatures that glowed with bioluminescent fury. Darren scavenged for food, eating plants that tasted bitter and sour. Sometimes they made him sick, but he couldn't afford to stop. He knew the Zarnak were watching him. They would be sitting in their council chambers, betting on how long it would take for him to die. He clenched his fists, his anger fueling him. "They'll see," he muttered. "They'll see what humans can do." On the 7th day, Darren encountered the beast. He'd been following a stream, hoping to find fresh water, when he heard a deep growl. Turning slowly, he saw it, a creature the size of a small ship, with dark, scaly skin and eyes that burned like molten gold. Its massive claws tore into the ground as it crouched, ready to pounce. Darren froze. He knew there was no running from something that fast. The beast roared and lunged. Darren dove to the side, barely escaping its claws. He grabbed a sharp rock and threw it at the creature, striking it on the snout. The beast snarled, more annoyed than hurt, and swiped at him again. Darren stumbled back, tripping over a root. The beast loomed over him, its fangs bared. But then, something unexpected happened. Instead of delivering the killing blow, the beast hesitated. It tilted its head, as if studying him. Its golden eyes glimmered with something Darren couldn't quite understand. Slowly, Darren sat up, keeping his hands raised. "You're not just an animal, are you?" he said softly. The beast growled but didn't attack. Over time, Darren began to understand the creature. It followed him, always keeping a distance. At first, he thought it was stalking him, waiting for him to weaken. But then he realized it was something else. The beast was curious. Darren started leaving scraps of food near his camp. The beast would take them, always when Darren wasn't looking. Gradually, it began to trust him. One night, as Darren sat by his fire, the beast approached. It was cautious, its golden eyes glowing in the darkness. Darren held his breath, his heart pounding. The beast sniffed the air and lay down a few feet away, its massive body blocking the wind. Darren couldn't help but laugh. "So, you're keeping me warm now?" The beast rumbled, a sound that almost seemed like a chuckle. Darren named the beast Molten, after its fiery eyes. Together, they navigated the dangers of Kaelix Prime. Molten's strength and speed made him a formidable ally, and Darren's resourcefulness kept them alive. But Darren wasn't content to survive. He wanted to escape. He discovered a ruined Zarnak outpost hidden in the mountains. The equipment was ancient, but some of it still worked. As he sifted through the wreckage, he found records of Kaelix Prime's history. The Zarnak hadn't just abandoned criminals here. They had used the planet as a testing ground, studying the evolution of life under extreme conditions. Molten wasn't just a predator. He was a product of their experiments. "They created you," Darren said, glancing at Molten. The beast growled softly, as if it understood. In the outpost, Darren found what he needed, a broken-down shuttle. It was old, but it might still fly. He spent weeks repairing it, scavenging parts from the jungle and the ruins. Molten guarded the camp, fending off predators and alerting Darren to danger. The day of their escape finally arrived. The shuttle roared to life, its engines sputtering, but holding steady. Darren strapped himself in and glanced at Molten, who was too large to fit inside. "You'll have to follow me on foot," he said with a grin. Try to keep up. Molten let out a loud roar, almost like a laugh, and bounded ahead as the shuttle lifted off. The Zarnak's sensors detected the ship as it left Kaelix's atmosphere. In the council chamber, alarms blared, and the High Chancellor stared at the screen in disbelief. "It's the human," he said, his voice cold with anger. "He's alive." When Darren returned to the Zarnak capital, he didn't come quietly. The shuttle crashed into the central square, its hull scorched and battered. As the Zarnak guards surrounded it, Molten leapt from the wreckage, roaring loud enough to shake the ground. The Zarnak had expected a broken man. Instead, they were faced with a survivor and his monstrous ally. Darren stepped forward, his eyes blazing with defiance. "You thought you could get rid of me," he said. "But I'm not just back to survive. I'm here to make you pay." Molten growled, his claws scraping the ground. The Zarnak guards hesitated, fear in their eyes. The last thing they expected was a human to return. But Darren wasn't just any human. He was the one they should have never underestimated.